Hey everyone, this is Dr. Popular, Word to Your Mother. I am super excited about The End Part 2, which is a remake of a yo-yo that we made back in 2006, I think, called The End, Part 1. And yeah, the reason I wanted to film a video today was to document the end with the homies that made it with me. I'm going to do quick intros here. We have Philip Cox. Phil, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful.
Yeah. And so Phil and I were the folks who formed Yes Absolutely. I don't know why that's air quotes. We formed a thing called Yes Absolutely. I guess because
it
we
was
never.
real.
Yeah, it was real. We just
I think
never
it's with
like
an exclamation point.
yeah. Yes, comma.
Absolutely.
Absolutely! Exclamation point! LLC register copyright. Yes, and we also have Nick Corea joining us. Nick is the modder behind the end. Howdy, Nick.
How you doing? Great to be here.
Nick is also known in the yo-yo forums as Feral Parrot, and Nick really made a name for himself modding yo-yos. One of the legendary modders, probably.
Oh, that's so generous of you, Doc.
Well, I don't. Here's the thing. I don't know how many people might still know your work, but there's people copying people that copied your work. Like there are like generations of Bolt modders. Yeah, that don't, that are like doing the same stuff you were doing that just might not even know, like they might have even got it from you. They like ripped off the person who ripped you off or whatever.
There's no ripping off here.
Not ripping off. Yeah, it's a modding community.
Cutting yo-yos up with the lathe. So
back in 2006-ish, which is, I only know this because I looked this up on Yo-Yo Wikipedia or Yo-Yo Wiki. The Flux Yo-Yo had been released by Anti-Yo. And I was not part of Anti-Yo, but like we lived in San Francisco, so we got to see their stuff and hang out with them. And Kia is like the reason I moved to San Francisco, and I did the logo for Anti-Yo. So we were always kind of like close to them, but like they were like the only people that we knew who had access to a factory. It was like back then it was like Duncan and Yo-Yo Factory and Tom Kuhn. And, there wasn't this boutique thing that there is now where everybody's making yo-yos. Back then, Kia knew a guy who knew a guy, in China that could hook him up. And I can imagine how expensive or what sort of a nightmare it was to do this. But they did the Flux, and I think they knocked the Flux out of the park.
Yeah, that was a fun yo-yo to play with.
Yeah.
The weight, the balance,
great.
Like that was excellent.
And the finish was kind of new at the time.
Yeah.
Like nothing had that sort of non-stick cookware feeling finish, and everybody wanted it. Great colors too.
Oh, yeah, I have one handy if you want to.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on a sec.
A few minutes later.
Yeah, look at that. Such memories.
The lighting's not great, but
so good.
Yeah. Pink and black. Got
nice.
that 80s vibe. Can't see it so great in the light, but
it's good.
There's the concentric circles around the
Look, there's another one. I'm so jelly.
I don't even have an end, and I have a Flux. Phil, do you have an end?
I do. Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Actually,
okay, cool.
Right here.
Like right there.
Wow. Look at that.
So okay, all right. We'll get to that one in a second. The Flux. I don't know when you did this. Nick, but my Flux has the schmoove grooves, and I think kind of what I'm getting at here is that this was a killer yo-yo that these guys made. It still had room for improvement. They're
a non-modded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So yeah, mine's schmoove or
with the
siliconed.
The diff pad.
Yeah.
So those guys kind of created in my mind the boutique market, and then they had this ultra cool like. The Flux was referencing Anti-Pop Consortium, and Anti-Yo was kind of also referencing Anti-Pop Consortium. So they kind of had this like indie hip hop, edgy colors, soft or salmon and pink or black. Yeah, very, very stylish.
And it was kind of the opposite of pro-yo, right? Yeah. So there was the pro-yo and then the anti-yo.
Yeah, it was. It was the opposite. Yeah. So they did a great job with the Flux, and they were able to. I mean, just even getting a run to happen was pretty amazing. and when they got them, they sold out, and they did their next run. And I don't remember exactly what happened. And Phil, I'm hoping maybe you can fill the gaps here. Did they have like a prototype, or did they just say we're making a yo-yo, and we were like, we want to buy some raw ones?
I think they had they were doing the Eats It, and I have one over there too. I can go grab it. But they were doing the Eats It, and I think that there was a fuck up in the factory, and they got a bunch that were like non-perfect, like they'd got banged up a little bit. There were like imperfections in the surface of them, and they're like, hey, we have all these, we don't really want to deal with them. As far as I remember, I might be wrong, but they were like, yeah, these are not quite right, and we don't know what to do with them. So if you guys want to do something cool with these bare kind of beat up halves,
were they
go
raw?
for it.
Yes.
They were raw.
Absolutely. You know, before that, I remember, Doc, you came to me and said we were playing around. It was out in front of Kia's shop area, and I don't know if it was a specific event. I mean, it could have been BAC. And you had an Eats It, and you said, I have this idea for cutting grooves. I want to call them schmoove rings. And you said, would you put some grooves in here? It's what I remember that. And so I did. And then you wanted to make it real, and you got the halves. That's sort of the order in which I remember it. I might be wrong, but
I think we kind of both experimented around with the smooth grooves. I modded some bolts and some other yo-yos with that kind of thing in our shop on our lathe.
That's right. You actually showed me one and said, could you put grooves like this?
Yeah. The thing was, I did that on some bolts, and I was going to do a bunch of bolts, and I got run over by a dump truck on my bicycle. With all of them in my bag on the way to the shop, and messed up my foot really bad, my ankle. I was couch bound for like a month and a half. Doc saved my ass. He loaned me a hacked Xbox with like a bunch of video game emulators on because pain meds. I was couch bound, like I couldn't read, I couldn't really play music, my brain wasn't really there, but I could swing around as Spider-Man or like crash cars virtually,
or play a ripped off version of Path of Neo, which, man, that was a good game.
Oh yeah, or Michael Jackson's what was the
was it?
Yes, yeah, the one that was like him as the gangster,
with the smooth criminal costume.
Yes, yeah.
So this is funny.
That one.
So Nick actually came to the modding bolt game after you. So we have just added another generation to the bolt modding legacy.
I mean, it was pretty close. I think we both had our fingerprints on the early days of that.
Yeah, my biggest, and it's not really technically bolt modding, because there was a shortage of bolts for a while, and Yo-Yo Jam wasn't putting them out, and everybody was asking for them, and I found I could take it, they didn't have Patriots at the time. It was a kick side. I could cut a kick side to about the same width as a bolt and get very close to the weight and shape, and then I put an O-ring groove on the star response side. So I was able to get a dual O-ring modded kick side, and it looked just like a bolt. And I'd asked you, Doc, I said, can I make bootleg bolts? And you said, as long as you don't do it in the colors of the bolt. So you can't do them in orange, you can't do them in baby blue. Yeah. And I made a bunch. My favorite was pink. I made a pale pink one for somebody. It's like you make stuff and then you have to give it to the person who asked you for it, and you just want to keep it.
I might have one of those old modded kick sides floating around somewhere.
Well, if
I remember that. Yeah.
somebody also did bootleg bolts, and I don't know if they got your approval on it, Doc, but it had its own cap, and I took your graphic and I scanned it, and I put a stenciled bootleg across it with some fake drips, and I think for the website I took yours off and put a Homestar Runners address on it, because I was really into Homestar Runner at the time. So there's probably only about like 15 of those out there somewhere. I didn't make that many.
So I didn't expect us to be talking about bolts so much, and it's really funny. Because I was like, oh, here's the one yo-yo we did together, but it turns out we have this other history of like bolts.
I can grab a couple.
Well, no, let's get back. I want to get back to talking about the end, but I will quickly say I just placed the payment for the first run of bolt replicas that I'm doing. So it's kind of funny timing. Like I'm trying to do like under $30 just plastic bolts. And make them as moddable as possible. No. Wait, yeah, actually, yeah. Not injection molded, yeah.
It was called something else
when
it was molded. Yeah,
Silicon. Yeah. But I think the main thing is we were already experimenting with schmoove grooves before bolts, before the end, which is pretty interesting. But the end would have been the first production yo-yo with the schmoove grooves. Now, I just want to say for the record, y'all both have a memory of kind of like a different thing than what I remember. So just, I'm going to put my version out there. I kind of remember being like, oh, you're making some yo-yos, and I trust y'all better, but I kind of remember talking to Kia and being like, oh, you're making some yo-yos. Hey, can you like order 44 extra halves, unanodized, so that we can like mod them and sell them? Although I don't know why I would have, well, I can say this, it would have been impossible for Phil and I, without the contacts in China, to make anything like that, right? So like this was the closest we could get.
Yeah. Kia was key. Kia and Sunny both were like key to the end happening. They were awesome, both of them. I miss them both. I haven't seen them for so long.
So the
I still talk to Sunny.
Yeah.
He's a sweetheart.
The Eats It ended up having an issue, and people think that we created the end to modify the issue, and I don't. It doesn't sound like that's the case. But the Eats It had an issue where the bearing, they pushed it out as far as they could, probably to get the most width that they can, and they ended up pushing it out too far, and they didn't have. You need to recess it a little bit, otherwise the string just falls off the bearing into the side of the yo-yo. And apparently this was a common problem with Eats Its. Other than that, Eats Its were great. So just use like a fat string and just cross your fingers.
String suck.
Yeah. Yeah. So
if you use a concave bearing, kind of alleviates some of that too.
I have a modified Eats It here that in my mind was the prototype for the end. Like, because in my mind I thought, well, this is our one we'll test on, and then we'll do our batch. But this doesn't quite jive with what y'all are saying, so I'm not sure if that's the case. But this is basically an end. When you take an Eats It and you actually, Nick, why don't you just walk us through your mod here?
So first thing is just to kind of reface it. To give it that flat side for the schmooves, and then you have the problem of the recess, because the Eats It was a pad yo-yo, unless I'm totally bonkers. And one thing that those yo-yos they never really fixed. Anti-yo had this for a very long time, is that the bearing sat on the same screw that brought the sides together, and that meant that there's a certain amount of play in a screw, and sometimes it's really snug and sometimes it's a little rattly, and a 420 steel into those aluminum halves, it was a tiny bit loose, and so a lot of times people would wrap plumber's tape on them to kind of take up a little space, so it'd bring them together a little more.
Blue Loctite.
Yeah, exactly. But once you got it good, it would play great. But sometimes there's a little game you had to play. Anyway, that still existed. So because there wasn't a lot of meat in that area of the aluminum of the shape. And there's no like modern yo-yos all the plastic yo-yos had this, is each half had an inner a piece that went inside the inner race of the bearing, and that just locks the halves together. There's no question. And these didn't. They had like a little bump on the inside to touch the bearing, and then a little bit of a guard. Anyway, I had to cut a schmoove ring. I mean a recess for, and it wasn't deep enough to do O-rings, so I only did it deep enough. I think it was like 5 thou, maybe 7 thou, just deep enough that I could put silicone in there. And it was really pushing the thickness of the wall at that point. Oh, right. That's a Bape. Is that the original Bape or the
this
Zilla?
Is a Bape? I guess this is.
It's not the Bapezilla.
Yeah, this is a Bapezilla. Yeah.
So you've shown us the pads.
Very similar. That was very similar.
Yeah.
Well, show us the inside, because it's basically the same yo-yo.
Yeah, it's basically the same design. Yeah.
So you can see there's no piece that inserts inside of the bearing. So the bearing sits on and you could show the other half right now, and it's probably a demo. Okay. The bearing sits on the bolt.
Let me pull the string off this.
So that was there you go. Yeah. So, and that I believe that the Bapes fit better than the Eatsits did when it comes to the bolt.
And here's what we're talking about. The bolt just comes right out.
It's just sitting there like that. Big giant bolt.
Big giant bolt.
And was Diffio the same, or did Diffio have?
Yeah.
Like the Sportster, same thing. So it's not like it was a bad yo-yo design. It just, if there was any issues in manufacturing, they came out in that problem of the center screw rattling around inside. But basically, I cut a groove. If you see over on, like Doc has it there, and then I cut 2 schmooves in, and they didn't have to be very deep. Those were I feel like they were like 2 thou. They're pretty shallow.
They're pretty.
And it was fun. I had the 44 halves, and I would, do the face cut on all of them because I had to have my tooling all set up. And so I did 44, refacings. Then I went back and did, schmoove rings, and then went back and did the O-ring groove or the silicone groove. There's never an O-ring could fit in there. And then I did a sanding pass where I had steel wool, and I had a little chuck I made out of brass that I could screw the yo-yo onto, and then it would be sitting there like attached, like the chuck would hold a piece that then the yo-yo the half was sitting there, so that I could get my my steel wool all around it while it's spinning. And I'm sure my shop teacher or whoever would have been yelling at me, but I kind of had my hand all up in there. I wanted to make sure that it had a really nice finish on it, and it was really consistent. There were some places that were kind of having dents or scratches or whatever, really subtle, and I just wanted to make sure that every half went to the anodizer as smooth as possible.
So you're saying you steel wooled the outside and the cup?
Yeah,
right.
All that stuff. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, when I look at this, which again, sort of, there's an end right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So dark. Let me try to get some light on this thing.
What I see when I see this is it's a little flatter on the top. So you just kind of like polished that, and then you went down. This has kind of like a real clean, like shininess, and then matte. But that's because this was done after it was anodized, where that was done before. But you can see that flat shape on that end there.
Yeah, so that's the flat surface that you see shiny on Doc's. And then, but I did brush it all because with the steel wool, because I wanted it to look more consistent and not so manufactured looking. So
one thing that people always point out when they talk about the end is by doing this mod, we made the bearing seat better, and we reduced string friction, which we can talk about schmoove grooves in a second. But the main thing is people say that we're basically removing, there was something designed to be X thickness, and we've just gone in and removed, a tenth of that or whatever. And so some folks have broken basically the nipple just somehow just popped right up.
So the little, you did something really cool there. You put lasers in the groove, which is really cool. So it
says schmoove in there under clear silicone.
It's awesome. So the thing is that when I measured that, this is all my fault. So in order to cut a groove, that wall was meant to be, I think it was, I don't know, like 15th hour. It's thick enough where it's not going to be weak. In aluminum, you can make aluminum so thick, and I don't have those numbers off the top of my head anymore. And I compromised that in order to put a groove in it for silicone. And I pushed it as far as I thought it could go. And with the inconsistencies of handmade mods, some are thinner than others. And it's a difficult thing to measure that thickness and make sure that each one is strong. And I thought I think at like 4th thou or something, I had the metal down to, and I thought that was enough. And I think some of them, especially if they have any impact at all, it's just too much stress. At the speeds that thing's spinning, all that weight gets concentrated into that thin piece of metal I made. If you design this yo-yo for a groove, it would be much thicker in there. It'd be like twice as thick, and then you could have a nice O-ring sized groove in there. But I took something that was meant to have a pad on it. Now, had I recessed a pad, that wouldn't have been such a problem. I could use a thin diff pad and just put a pad groove in there. But silicone was the shit at the time. So
pads didn't exist back then. Not like that. Not like the slim 19 millimeter.
Yeah,
there was like thick
there
one
was
drop
diff
pads.
pads. Yeah,
diff had like a thicker one and a thinner one, but they were not a very positive grab. And sometimes that was really cool. There was kind of a moment where you got to know when it was going to grab, and there was a little bit of a slip right before it grabbed, and you could play with that during your play. And silicone is like, nope, I'm coming back, right?
Diff pads too. Like when you first got them, they were really grippy, and then the more you played, it kind of like smoothed the surface way out until they were like almost unresponsive, to the point where like they didn't want to bind even at all.
That's true.
It was almost like they got polished.
And recessing them felt like the right thing to do because, and I recessed hundreds of pads on yo-yos probably, but it makes that even worse later. Like at first they kind of intrude on the gap because they were just stuck on the plastic, so the gap felt narrower. So if you want a massive gap, you recess them pads, woot. But then they just weren't touching the string enough, and with that softening effect you're talking about, they became almost unresponsive.
Somewhere along the line, somehow, we decided to partner with Anti-Yo and buy 44 halves from them unfinished. Either they were nicked or not. I reached out to Phil probably because it's too much investment for one person, but also because it would have been too much labor. I think like this definitely needed someone to work on, and probably because Phil, maybe I forgot, but probably because Phil was doing modding and stuff. Maybe we had already talked about doing something together before that. Do you remember how we came up with the name? Yes, absolutely.
I think it was a conversation that we had about a trip that I play in a Balinese gamelan still. Gamelan Sekar Jaya, and I think we were talking about like a time that I went to Bali and we were asking for directions, and the Balinese are impeccably polite as a general rule, and they don't want to say no to anything. So if you're asking directions, you can say, hey, is the so and so over there? And they'll say yes, and you say, so it's over there? Yes. They just like, so do I turn right here? Yes. Do I turn left here? Yes. Absolutely. And there was a lot of like negativity going around in the world at the time still, but and it just seemed like a positive kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of name.
That's fun. I still love the name. I mean, like using commas and punctuation marks in a yo-yo company name was pretty edgy at the time. And then as I recall, we came upon. Well, actually, I really don't know how we came across the name The End, other than in my mind, it was hilarious that the very first yo-yo we ever released would be called The End. And it was maybe a little fatalistic. Maybe I knew there was just going to be one or something.
I think there may have been a touch of nihilism in there mixed in. Optimistic nihilism.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. The End. I mean, that sounds great. The End by Yes, Absolutely. And people are like, what? So we got these halves. We sent them to Nick. Nick did a fantastic job modding them. I want to say that
yes.
These were probably, I mean, depending on your definition of like manufactured or whatever, these were the first yo-yos to ever have schmoove grooves like in a production run. Now, again, is it a mod or a production run? I'm kind of unclear. This seems to me kind of like a production run, but then again, we rode off the back of like something pretty much already done. But these would have been the very first yo-yos to have schmoove grooves. And the idea with schmoove grooves was basically if you have a flat yo-yo, which a lot of yo-yos, I mean, if you look at the flux, that's all just this super high wall. And people were using concave bearings, which Frank DeFeo had kind of brought to the game. They're using concave bearings to keep string right in the center of the yo-yo. And I always hated, and that was to keep it so it didn't rub the edge of the yo-yo. I always disliked concaves because I always played with a lot of layers. And when you just throw a sleeper, it centers to the, middle of the bearing. It's great. When you throw a layer on, like you do, trapeze and then like another layer, you have like 3 pieces of string that all want to be in the center. They're not spacing out, evenly. They're not being like, hey, cool, it's over here. They're all like crunching towards the center, and I hated it. So my idea was, let's just remove that flat surface. And so, if you have like a straight line and you just leave that peak there and then you kind of cut out or whatever, and then have a peak here, if the string's touching the side, the most it'll ever touch is just those little ridges. So that was something we did with the bolts. It went from like me talking about it on forums to like, a couple of those mods to being in here, which really makes sense because, we talked about the way you made these. They were super flat on that inside wall. So it would have been like touching 100% of the wall if the strings got to the side. So to kind of celebrate the schmooves, when we when we laser etched the yo-yo, and Phil, you can show your yo-yo again. We had the numbered nipple. So each one had a number on a nipple, which is kind of amazing. I guess on one side of the nipple.
Number
13. Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the pixel art, which Nick did that. Nick pretty much was like, "Oh, Doc likes pixel art. I'll just kind of mock up this."
Sorry, my lighting is not optimal.
Well, there's the YA, which I thought was really cool because it could be the same up and down. Yeah. That Doc really liked that idea. Doc is selling himself short here because he was super inspirational to what we're going to do with this pixel art. He had a lot of stuff sketched out and he was thinking about it. The Y and A is really cool because it says the same thing on either side. It's a Y and it's an A. And then the 8-bit looking spaceship idea is that they were flying around and coming together, shooting at each other, pew pew, with the YA being little spaceships, which I thought was super cool. So
a slight space invaders nod, tip of the hat.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so we laser etched on the nipple, on the inside of the bowl, and on the outer ridge, and we laser etched underneath the silicone. Now this is flowable silicone that I think the three of us just had some terrible times just putting in a tiny drip of flowable silicone and then like a credit card to kind of smooth it off or whatever. It was, real hand done. And the idea with the laser etching there, where it says schmoove, even though that's not the schmoove, that's just the O-ring. But the idea was they would also, in theory, help the silicone stick more. It would give it more surface. And I think a lot of this stuff is still stuff that I can't prove. Like, do schmoove grooves work? Does laser etching underneath, is flowable silicone, does it work? I think it works, but that could just be like power of positivity, kind of making it happen. And I will note that we spelt it SHMOOVE, and somewhere along the line, I guess I added a C to schmoove groove.
So it's more of a schmoove.
Yeah, and so people always correct me.
These are actually SH, not SCH.
And in the description, I've got the write up from 2006, and I'm talking about like the beauty of schmoove grooves, and I misspelt it or whatever. I mean, I don't know, just somewhere. I mean, I'm terrible, and somewhere I just added a C, and yeah, history just constantly reminds me that I misspell it now or whatever. And yeah, so it was kind of funny coming back to this and being like, oh, I did spell it that way once. So yeah, then before we laser etched it, we took it to an anodizer. Who knew the anodizer? Who was it Sonny that hooked us up?
Not me, probably Sonny.
I think it might have been Sonny. It was a dude in San Carlos.
Yeah.
I was working as a courier at the time, and one of our clients was right by there, and I was dropping him off and picking him up, and yeah, that place smelled really bad.
Really? So we
Really bad.
we took these beautiful steel-wooled modded eats at halves to this guy, and I don't even know what color we asked for. Orange? Red?
I think we asked for gold.
Huh.
But it came out like this weird, like greenish, like metallic brown, like almost like poop.
So
like
we-
metallic poop, diarrhea.
We had to ask him to like strip them and do them again, right?
Yeah. We're like, this isn't even close to what, because I remember I picked them up. I didn't even look at them because I was like in a rush. I grabbed the box from him and got back and met you. I might have met you at like at Bender's or something. I forget. And opened them up and we're like, eek.
What the fuck? Yeah. So
these don't look very good.
We must have brought them back to him, and he said, okay, I'll strip them and redo them, but it'll change the texture. And we were like, whatever, we can't have this like vomit green like yo-yo. So yeah, he stripped them, and the second batch came out kind of bad too, but like in a really endearing way.
Yeah, I mean, they're a little blotchy. It doesn't really show up on the computer with like a harsh light, but yeah, it's definitely gold-ish, mostly gold, but it's got this weird kind of like mottled, like if you look at it in the right, like when the light hits it at an oblique angle, it's got like this weird mottled, like slightly mottled finish. It's cool looking.
I think the best looking ones almost look the way galvanized pipe looks, where it's like it's kind of a stained glass windowy kind of thing where some parts and there's like lines, but it's hard to explain. But I thought some had that effect more than others. Each one was unique. I think if you were to lay them all out, there were some where a little more on the brown side, a little more on the gold and bright side, and they all had that modeling that looked a little different. And the best looking ones I thought had the most harshest lines between the modeling. Yeah. I thought it was really cool.
So the look of them, we were worried about how people would react, and I think we just kind of confidently were like, look at how awesomely weird they are, and people are like, oh yes, awesomely weird. But it was the texture that really was a surprise to me. Like of all the things that we planned on, the texture was a complete accident because it came from acid bath. And what happened is when he stripped the anodizing off, that's a hardcore process. And it basically left, someone explained to me that if you got a microscope and you kind of looked at it super close, it'd be like these little diamond edges, just like not sandpaper, because sandpaper is like little squares. This is like just like little tiny points and really sharp. But when you feel it, it just feels super velvety and smooth. And it was amazing for silky finger spins smooth. And it would just spin on your hand. It felt great in your hand.
Grinds.
And, which were the thing then. And the anti-yo coats in general were already pretty interesting coats, but they were like a coat. They felt like something on top of the yo-yo, where this was like the yo-yo just had this velvety finish. And so that was how we got this amazing texture, this really weird look, how we even got these yo-yos produced. That's all that story I think we just kind of covered.
So the way that that I understand is like when you anodize something, you acid etch the surface, and then you bond a color onto the acid etch surface. So it's like little points, like you said, and then he stripped all that stuff off and acid etched it again. So it made those little points like pointy points.
Yeah.
So there was a lot less surface area touching. Like when you touched it, there were only like little microscopic points rather than like larger microscopic points for like normal anodization. And even though it was a screw up, it actually felt way better.
Yeah, it felt amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
But there was an issue that no one else seemed to run into except for me. And I ran into it. I could borrow someone's end. They could have owned it for 3 years. It's the most cherished treasure. I toss it once and I would break the string. And I broke the string on 2 of my eats. It's one I think was like an unnumbered prototype, and then one was like number 13 or whatever. So I had 2, and both of them hit the ground hella hard. I was breaking string left and right, and I couldn't figure it out. And other people would put string on mine and toss it and not have the issue. And then I would be like, well, can I throw yours? And I would throw theirs and I'd break the string. It was like magic. It was super freaking weird. And what it turned out was, it felt like a freaking curse because there was no science that understood. Like they could throw my yo-yos, it wouldn't do it. And I could throw their yo-yos, and I was the issue. Like that was the weird thing, right? Like it was just me. And one day I was trying to figure out what could be breaking the string, and I kind of looked at the string was kind of breaking around here. So one day I took a piece of string, brand new, and I did this maybe 3 times, and the string snapped. It just right off. Like I wasn't even pulling tight. I was just sort of like, right, super soft. So I did it again, super soft, and I thought, oh wow, this is crazy. And I tried buffering it. I couldn't buffer it. I took it apart, rubbed it on my jeans, trying to smooth it, and I think I eventually did kind of get it smooth. But like this was one of the yo-yos that I'd been playing with really heavily, and it still was just, it would break a string just right. And what it turns out, the reason why it seemed to be happening to me is I think I was doing tricks where back in the day, tricks mostly took place on a plane. You pick your plane, your forward or your sideways. We weren't doing rejection tricks yet. Spirit bombs were just kind of coming around. So spirit bombs would have been one of the first tricks, or wrist mounts would have been one of the first tricks that broke the plane, where you had kind of 3D
like
elements.
Off-axis kind of stuff.
Yeah. But I was doing stuff where I would be spinning, but I would be spinning in a way where the yo-yo would be, I can't do the letter A here, but the yo-yo would be slightly moving forward or backward. For instance, if I caught a yo-yo on a trapeze, instead of catching it here, I would catch it behind my hand, and then I would transition to the front. And even though mostly the yo-yo is staying on that plane, it is traveling from here to here, which means like rubbing the string. So that's why I was breaking strings and no one else was just because you could say it was sloppier. I was moving my plane forward and backward. So as much as I loved the finish, it ended up being kind of a curse. And that's it. So like that, for me, all mine got dinged up.
That is why I have a concave bearing on mine.
Yeah.
I think perhaps you using a non-concave bearing might have shot you in the foot on that, because that keeps it a little bit away from the sides.
Well, do me a favor, put a string on, put it together, and I know that one's probably, maybe it's buffered out, but I want to know if you can kind of, maybe pull a little harder than I was saying it was, but see if you can go around, see if it tears that string.
I will say, all that stripping didn't help my thin wall any at all.
Yeah.
No.
I think between the laser and the etching, it's probably only like a 10% more awful than my cut was, but I think that possibly made it even weaker.
So to the breaking, I only know of one person who broke a yo-yo. Maybe there's 2. I mean, I guess 2 out of 22 is a pretty significant run. But people keep talking about it as if it happened left and right. And
no,
to
it's like the internet hypes it up.
So let's try this. This is a relatively old string too, but do like this.
I can
you mean?
hear it.
Yeah, that's how I would do it. And I was not pulling much, but mine was kind of brand new. So it looks like it's not going to break.
I can feel it. Like
it's making a noise, and the sound is a something.
It feels like there's. It's getting pretty wound up. It feels like there's it's getting abraded.
Yeah.
I think yours is smoothed out throughout the years, and I just happen to be doing it extra hardcore when they were kind of brand new or unused.
It's like it's definitely made a change in the surface of this string. I imagine that if the yo-yo was spinning at however many RPMs yo-yos spin at, over a couple of throws, that off-axis stuff, that might actually, it's definitely making a difference.
I was really hoping it would just snap, just so everyone knew I wasn't crazy.
But I remember, Doc, you actually showing me that. You said, check it out, and you went, 1 pink. Like, it's like you went around like, maybe 5 to 10 times real quick, and it came out. Also, I don't know, Doc, if you do this, but I know a lot of people who get twist out of their strings by doing that thing where you get it and you pull sideways, and so it's an off-axis pull, and it like pulls a spin out. That probably wouldn't be a good idea with the original end.
So how much? I know the number here. How much do you think? So when we made this yo-yo, we had bought pretty much assembled yo-yos. We'd bought them at a inflated wholesale price, probably.
There it goes.
Right on.
All right.
Yeah. So we bought these yo-yos.
It took a while, but
we bought these yo-yos. We anodized them. We laser etched them. Nick did labor on all of them. There was a lot of driving. I made denim yo-yo pouches for each of these. Do either of y'all have a guess on how much we sold them for?
I don't remember. I remember we spent a fair amount of time with the numbered halves and the non-numbered halves trying to match them for weight, because some of them wobbled like crazy. And I think we did a pretty good job of like getting the whole run pretty balanced. I remember it took a while. A bunch of tubes of flowable silicone from the auto parts store. That was pretty messy. So
we charged $150 for these yo-yos in
I
2006,
at the
which
time,
is like,
that was like, holy crap, that's expensive.
That's like titanium price or something. Like that's for back then. That's pretty.
But they sold quickly. I believe they all sold out very quickly.
We pre-sold them using like a PayPal link, and I don't know how we stopped from overselling, but they did sell out really quickly. They were all sold before we'd even applied silicone to them or whatever.
The amount of labor time that went into these, we actually took a hit on that. If you
labor.
If you put in, if we actually like billed for our hours, which this was more of a labor of love, but like if we billed for our hours, like we would have taken a giant hit on that.
I mean, but even with that, I think we bought these at slightly more than what Anti-Yo paid when they were fully laser etched and anodized. So like we were already paying more than manufacturing price, and then we anodized, and then we laser etched, and then hired Nick, and I think Nick gave us a hell of a deal.
I think I charged $350 for all of them.
Yeah, which is a hell of a deal, but still, like that's added cost. So not even factoring our time, I think we might have already been taking a hit. But they sold well. They're legendary. To kind of talk about their place in history, they are one of those yo-yos that are whispered. People talk about the end. And I don't know how so many people heard about it. I thought schmoove grooves were going to take over the world. I thought this is it. Like now, because it costs literally nothing to add a schmoove groove to your yo-yo. Why not do it? So I just thought everyone's going to copy this. And it turns out schmoove grooves didn't catch on. Like they caught on, but they caught on like 4 years ago. Like now every yo-yo has schmoove grooves. It's super
they waited
cool.
For the copyright to run out. Oh wait, shit, we didn't copyright it.
They do like a different version of schmoove grooves, but I think it's still like totally like oh, that's a great idea. Let's just add this little nook here and we're good. So like I feel like this kind of and even writing schmoove around there kind of helped, get people familiar with the name. I mean, people know what schmoove grooves are, even though we made 22 of these.
So I remember the early, when we were talking about and like the early prototypes of schmoove grooves, like I was trying to learn like slack tricks and like cat suicides. Yeah. And I was like, I wonder if we put a bunch of concentric rings, if it'll give it just a little bit of turbulence or friction, or just a little bit, not enough to slow down the spin, but just enough to keep that loop open a little bit more. And it seems like that kind of worked. These are pretty good for doing suicides and that kind of stuff.
So like the reason we created schmoove grooves was to straight up just reduce friction, like by removing surface, literally. Some people pointed out that we were creating extra surface, thus extra air friction, which then would help keep a loop open more. Basically, by reducing surface friction, we created extra surface, thus just more place for wind to move, and it just kind of, in theory, keeps that string open. That's a thing I've heard. I'll buy whatever. I just want people to, put schmoove grooves in their yo-yos.
If there's anyone out there that's a physicist that wants to do the math on this, that would be awesome.
It's been done. There was someone who was in some fancy ass school where they had access to the computer and also like the machine specifically for aerodynamics, and they actually ran this test. And this is one of the things that's on one of the old. It's on OneDrop's forum, but then OneDrop's forum got hacked.
If you ever get a hold of those, send it my way. I'd like to read that.
Oh, it's got an amazing name, like the air properties of schmoove grooves on a flowing yo-yo or something. It's really rad. I'm trying to look up on eBay the sold offers. I can't remember the most an end has ever sold for. I've heard of one selling for $700.
I heard back in the day, like I heard a $600 one, but yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So these were coveted yo-yos. These were, for whatever reason, they just were legendary yo-yos. And they were the first yo-yo to market with the schmoove groove. We were not the first boutique yo-yo. We were the first micro boutique manufacturers. A niche that nobody has still filled. Let's buy somebody's boutique yo-yos and mod them. But I wanted to kind of wrap up here. It's been an hour, but I wanted to show you, so the reason I wanted to reach out to you, it's 2021 now. 15 years since we first created the end. Elvin Lim from Round Spinning Objects reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to do a collab together? And he did a couple things with Anto-Yo and a few other kind of reissues. And, the first thing I thought was the bolt. And then the second thing I thought was the end. He was much more interested in doing the end. So we did the end. And he already had the CAD files for the Eats It. Which is kind of amazing that someone, because maybe he had the CAD files of a copied Eats It, but he says, he got the original CAD files and he updated them to fix a lot of these issues. And they've released the Bapezilla and a few other things, through Round Spinning Objects, and Anto-Yo. So at first he was not that interested in just doing another thing, kind of like that. But somewhere along the line, I guess he started drooling, thinking about, getting an end finally. And so he agreed to it. And do you want to see the box or the yo-yo? What's that? The box? Okay. So this is the end packaging. Wow. And nice. I drew all the art here, and that's Nick and myself and an alien. And you are not going to be able to see this at all.
I'm the alien?
I'm sorry, Phil and myself and an alien. Nick is here modding, turning each yo-yo. Here we have Phil and I kind of like plotting,
That's great.
Holding an Eats It and plotting. Here we have like the sandpaper finish up close. And here we have one. This is based off of a photo by Zammy Ickler. This is Zammy's broken yo-yo.
I took that picture for him.
Yeah, broken yo-yo. And I will say that this art right here, if you look really closely at the shading in the chairs, I wrote Phil's name, I wrote Nick's name, I wrote Sonny and Kia. I That's scrolled fun. in and like the cross hatching. There's like all these hidden things in there. And this comes with
it takes a certain amount of moxie or whatever to like put a picture of a broken original yo-yo on the reissue.
I mean, it's whether I like it or not, it's part of the history, the breaking the strings. Each one comes with a popcorn enamel pin. We're kind of going for like a movie theme. The end is what you usually think of when you see a kind of a movie. And then this is number 1, and there are ironically 2 number 1s. So, take that for what you will. And we have, the E here, but referencing the pixel art that Nick did, this is Elvin's idea was to make it look like film strips. So if you can see on the inside, it actually looks like 35 millimeter film. And they are numbered matching numbers, which we did not do. That's crazy commitment to have matching numbers.
Yeah.
We just did number on one side so that we could kind of switch halves. It's got, kind of referencing the outer art. It's got this weird color. And this is basically kind of, modern yo-yos, they like to do these gaudy splash colors. And this is like a subtle splash of 2 similar oranges. So that's what's going on here.
It looks much oranger and much shinier than the original.
We just couldn't get that. Like he tried all sorts of different ways to kind of get this to look like that, and we could never get it. So this is the insides, and I will say that underneath the pads, it says schmoove, but you can't see it. So that's pretty hardcore.
I'm gonna tear that out and put flowable silicone in there for the
so you can read it.
Yeah, pretty hardcore to take that time to anodize the inside, and they just put a little pink sticker on it. Elvin wanted to do a bigger run, and he ended up having issues with anodizing, if you can believe it. His first run was eaten by anodizing issues. It's a curse. And I was like, please tell me you're going to like acid bathe them. And he's like, no, they're gone. We're just throwing them away. I'm like, no, but you got to get that finished. You have to follow through. So anyway,
he should have done it.
He only had 42 for sale. And they went on the market yesterday. But he's making more. So this isn't the end of the end. He already had plans to do 3 colors. So I think he's going to do maybe one more color like this, one more run like this, and then these 2 other colors. There's going to be the end available in multiple colors, and there's going to be a bigger run. So he called yesterday's release the Prelude to the End, Part 2, which of course this is called the End Part 2. And then we're going to finally have
even more indie.
The Indier Return of the End. The end part
of the end.
The end part 2 to have something final and then have a sequel. I love it. So these hit the market I think for less than what we sold ours for like $115 or something.
Wow.
Not much less. Yeah, but like considering 15 years of inflation. That's that. I just wanted to kind of capture that. Like I said, I gotta, start wrapping up. But did either of y'all have anything you wanted to add to kind of like that we didn't talk about?
Only that while polishing, I was in a rush and I was polishing the last one. I was on the last 2, so the second to last one, and I was going around and my thumb caught a little grip and plunged into a tool that I had still mounted, and my finger basically just got jammed in there, and it punched a hole in my thumb, a really nice, neat, square hole, and that's why I got number 22, because I got the last one. I know who knows which half I actually cut myself on, but just that my blood went into this yo-yo as well. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Hella metal.
Oh man. I probably still have metal particles inside of my thumb from that or something.
Like we said, we didn't make any money on this probably. So, it's not like we could like reinvest it into doing another, run of anything. We didn't suddenly have connections in China that we didn't have. The boutique market, even though anti-yo is sort of the beginning of it, it wouldn't come around for probably 6 more years. So
A while, yeah.
yeah. But this was cool. We had an influence in the world of yo-yoing, and I really appreciate, working with you guys on it. This was really fun, project.
I miss you both. We should hook up and have a beer.
Absolutely.
Toss a yo-yo.
I was honored to work with you guys and be part of that project. So
Likewise.
Cool. Well,
good time.
What you did, the machining you did, Nick, was awesome. Just fantastic.
I learned a lot. Thanks. No, it was great.
Well, thanks so much, y'all, for hanging out. It's been really good seeing you. We'll catch up in 15 more years to talk about how you like your in part 2s, which you are both getting in part 2s. I promise.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll take mine and have it double anodized, stripped and re-anodized.
Ooh, yeah. Gotta break some strings.
Cool.